I think we're live. This is always a slow start. Great. There we are. I'm super excited to be here with you, Laura Vanderkam, someone I've read for years and years. So it's exciting to be here live with you um, in the moment. And of course, now my computer seems to be potentially freezing. There we go.
There
Okay.
you are again.
There
That's
we go.
good.
Okay.
I'm like, well,
Okay.
I'm excited to be talking to you. If I can see you, that would be great.
There we go. Okay, great. So, delighted to be here with you. I have been a devoted reader for years and years. The thing I love about your books, Laura, is that they help with what I think is so important in every day of our lives, which is choosing what we do, thinking about our time more thoughtfully, making the most of each of our days, not by rushing around and being more productive necessarily, but just by being more intentional. That's what I think a lot of what I take away from your books comes down to is that intentionality. And the new book, if people don't know, it's called Big Time. It is about time abundance. It's about not being necessarily stressed about time or stuffing more in, as we sometimes think about productivity books being, but rather about actually reveling in time and restoring our sense of peace and tranquility in a way. With the time that we're allotted. I'm Jeremy Kaplan, by the way. I write the Wonder Tools newsletter. If someone's new to this podcast or this video or this newsletter, and yeah, Laura, maybe just add to a little bit about your bio. You're a mom of five, which I think is incredible. As a child of six, a mom who had six kids, I know that that's a big, huge responsibility. While you're writing these seven or eight books at this point. So yeah, fill in the gap in terms of who you are.
Absolutely. Yeah. So thank you so much for having me, Jeremy. I'm thrilled to be here. Um, I write books about time management and productivity. I also speak on that topic. I have two podcasts related to it. One is called Before Breakfast, which generally features short weekday morning tips on how to take your day from great to awesome. And I have the occasional interview episode as well. I also co host a podcast called Best of Both Worlds with my friend Sarah Hart Unger. She is a practicing physician, mom of three. We talk about the intersection of work and family from the perspective of people who truly love both. I think it is such a gift to do work out in the wider world that is making a difference, and then also to be raising a happy, thriving family. To that end, yes, I have five kids. My oldest is 18. He just finished his freshman year of college, so that was pretty exciting. And then the others are 16, 14, 11, and 6. So yes, I have a freshman in college and a kindergartner. Makes for a quite the mix, quite the circus here at this house, but I am truly enjoying it. I do a few other things. I sing in a choir. Actually, I sing in two choirs right now, but that's a little ridiculous. And, generally trying to make the most of my time. So I'm hoping that the tips I can share today and the topics we talk about will be helpful for people as we're trying to figure out how to spend our hours in ways that are meaningful and enjoyable for ourselves and the people we care about.
Thanks, Laura. That's great. I love also how you are a kind of Renaissance person in the sense that you're not just working, you're not just parenting. You also, do have these other pursuits and interests. I want to ask you along the way about these big projects that you do, listening to all the works of Bach, all the works of Beethoven, reading all of Jane Austen, reading all of Shakespeare, reading War and Peace, all these really exciting year-long projects. Before we get to that, though, you mentioned the circus, and that's one of the chapters in this new book, Big Time, addresses this idea of how do we manage this three-ring circus. Could you talk a little bit about that? How we juggle all of these different things.
Yeah, so I am really drawn to this metaphor of life being a circus. And when people say to you, like, oh, Jeremy, my life is a circus, what they mean is that it's chaotic. But that is really a slander against circuses because a circus is not chaotic at all. A circus is very complex, but a circus is about the most organized thing you will ever see, right? Like nobody is getting shot out of a cannon at the wrong time. So I think we should actually aspire to think of our lives as a circus. And the more complex your life is, the more important it is to view yourself as the ringmaster of this circus. And we can even extend the metaphor to think about it being a three ring circus. I like to think of my life in terms of career. So, obviously, professional stuff that I'm managing, relationships. So, that would be family, friends, some community stuff as well. And then self. So the things I need to do for my own physical, mental, spiritual, emotional health, right? So that's the third ring. And, different rings have bigger acts or smaller acts going on in them at any given moment, but we're not going to have a circus where there's nothing going on in two of the three rings or anything like that. So I like to think of all three rings and what is going on in all three at all times. Thinking about, the order, the sequence, the logistics. We can extend the metaphor further and talk about how in a circus performance, people are often um, performing over a net, right? And if we have a complex life, we need to think about how we can have backup plans and what we'll do if things go wrong so that the complexity does not descend into chaos. And finally, a circus is managed for delight. Nobody wants to watch a circus where everyone's just kind of trudging through their acts. Like, you want to make it look like fun. And so, as part of being the ringmaster of my circus, I am trying to make sure that I always have something that I'm really looking forward to, right? That this is a circus I actually want to be watching. And the more I keep that metaphor in mind, the more I feel like excited about having a big, busy, complex life, as opposed to feeling like it's something I need to be frightened of, wary of, trying to figure out ways to, scale it back.
Yeah, one of the things I like about that is changing the rhetoric and changing the narrative, right? Instead of feeling like we're stressed, right? There's a kind of a vibe that people like to share that I'm so stressed, my schedule's so packed, I'm overwhelmed, and almost as a badge of honor, right? Whereas you're changing that perception a little bit, right? That people have of their own experience, and shifting, from thinking about, the race and the rat race to thinking about time in a little bit more expansive way. Can you talk a little bit about how you came to that awareness? I mean, you're someone who's packed a lot into your days for a long time, right? How did you kind of shift your mindset to think more expansively about time?
Well, one of the best things I ever started doing is tracking my time. And many years ago, and when I first had this revelation that there are 168 hours in a week, right? And that viewing your life in terms of weeks is generally a better idea than looking at life in terms of days. Because I think often when people are feeling crunched and harried, it's because they're looking at life only on, say, Thursday, right? And life is more than just this Thursday. There's a lot more time than just this Thursday. And maybe all the things you want to do in life do not fit into an average Thursday. I mean, people are like, well, Laura, there aren't enough hours in the day to get to everything I want to get to. And I totally believe that. But we don't live our lives just in any individual day. We can generally view time more broadly. And the funny thing about this to me, so my first time management book was called 168 Hours.
Yeah.
And to this day, I believe if you Google it, it's one of the first things that comes up. Like, which seems so strange because if you Googled like 24 hours, you would never get an individual author, right? So why is it that we don't think of 168 hours? People say 24/7 and they don't multiply it through. Like, there are 168 hours in a week, and that is a number that I think we should keep in mind, partly because it shows us how much space there is. Anyone who is working a full-time job, so let's say 40 hours a week, and is sleeping 8 hours a night, so that is 56 hours per week, has 72 hours for other things. Now, that's obviously not all free time. People are commuting, people are doing housework, they're caring for family members, they're taking care of their own physical bodies, but it is still a lot of space. And yet, if you think about having a full-time job, you feel like that's the full amount of my time. So just looking at 168 hours helps us see this expansiveness. And so then once I started realizing that life was 168 hours or even bigger periods of time, then I started tracking it in terms of 168 hours. Like, what have I done over the past 168 hours as I'm writing it, keeping track of my time? And that was so helpful for seeing how much can fit in a week and still have space for other things, still have downtime. I mean, these days, I can still see this, like, as I'm tracking a week, like, last weekend was somewhat of definitely the circus, in terms of the sheer volume of things that was going on at my household, and yet there was still downtime. Like, I finished a thousand-piece puzzle, I read at least an hour in a new book, like, there was downtime even within all this other stuff that was going on. And so I think having that broader perspective really helps us see that.
One of the sections of the book I really appreciated, and I think other people will appreciate of the new book, and again, if you're just joining, we're talking about time and Laura's new book, Big Time, is the section where you're talking about work, right? A lot of people might accept your idea that, during your free time and the golden hours, which we can talk about afterwards, about, after work, you have a little bit more flexibility, but a lot of people might feel like they're very harried at work and they, may or may not like the day to day activities they're doing. You had people try three different things, which I thought was really interesting. And I also like, by the way, the idea that you actually aren't just talking out from your head, like based on your experience, because you point out everyone has very, very different work experiences. But actually, you're getting 200, what was it, 269 people or something like that, to fill out these studies and sort of test these tactics, which I thought was great. And the three tactics, as I remember them, and you can correct me, one of them is essentially a little bit more social time, like being with other humans that you like or that you work with and want to get to know. Doing a little bit more of the work you like. There's this concept of job crafting, which some people may know, which is like doing more of the work you actually enjoy. And then the third one, which is like these mini breaks, right? Like being intentional and like zoning out or doing mindfulness or going for a walk or other things, right? So these three things, and then you had people test them out, right? So maybe you could share a little bit about what you found from doing the study and maybe something that surprised you and why you think those three tactics in particular are effective.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't want anyone to wish time away, because all time is valuable. And we're not all massively in love with our jobs. I think it's great when people are, but I understand that people work in a variety of ways, and in many cases, work is something we're doing because we need to make a living, we need to pay the bills. But that said, we don't need to be just hoping to be on the other side of the next 8 hours. There are definitely things we can do during the daily experience of work to make work better, even if you don't have a ton of control over your actual job itself, right? And I think that's an important point because a lot of productivity and time management literature assumes that people are in a corporate environment,
Mhm.
right? And so it's all talking about managing meetings and emails. And that is definitely important. If you're in a corporate environment, you're managing meetings or emails, or else it assumes sort of an entrepreneurial environment where you have a lot of control over your time. And yet there are many people who don't work that way. So, like, how does productivity advice or workplace advice, you know, matter for somebody who's like a construction site supervisor or, managing a fast casual restaurant or is got a, working in retail or anything like that. There's all sorts of jobs that don't fit this sort of mold of productivity books. So I want to say, well, what strategies can I come up with that can be broadly applicable and that can help people in most lines of work spend their working hours better? And if you look at self-determination theory, there's a couple of things that tend to, in general, make people happier, as they are doing anything. And one is having some, autonomy and a sense of competence over what they're doing. One is, those are separate, but anyway, like competence, um, the sort of engagement with others, like connectedness and belonging,
Mhm.
and then autonomy over your time. And so how could we get at this? Well, so the competence idea is, could you spend one more hour per week on the work you like best?
Mhm.
So that within any job, there are some tasks we like more, there are some tasks we like less.
Mhm.
In many cases, we have at least some control about spending slightly more time on the favorite tasks and slightly less on the others. If you have control over your time at work, you could obviously just do this on your own, but you can also, speak to a supervisor. Like many managers are at least open to the idea of people spending more time on the work that they truly want to be doing, versus the stuff they like less. They're not going to automatically do it, but if you have a conversation, you might be able to scale it up a little bit. Um, could you spend 15 more minutes per week even with somebody you like at work? So deepening a relationship with a colleague. Like even if you like nothing about your job, hopefully you like some of the people who are there. And having friends at work is really awesome because friends are people you would be willing to spend time with outside of work. So how much more exciting if you can spend time with them while you're on the clock. And then as you mentioned, the breaks, like taking 2 intentional breaks per day. Everybody takes breaks in some way, shape, or form. But sometimes they are unintentional.
Mhm.
Like, we don't think about how we're gonna spend them, and so we don't spend them in maximally rejuvenating ways. But if you think ahead of time about how you will spend your breaks, you are able to choose kind of mini vacations and exercise these bits of autonomy in your schedule. So, I had people try these out over the course of 3 weeks. Their satisfaction with their work days rose to a statistically significant degree. I had people telling me things like, "I thought about leaving my job before this. I may still do that at some point, but now I am seeing that there are all sorts of ways that I can make work better,
Mhm.
whether I quit or not."
That's great. Somebody was asking about the tracking, and I
Mhm.
wonder about this. You've been very diligent about that since 2015, I think, and a lot of people I've talked to have found it difficult to keep tracking. Right, they fall off the wagon. They're not sure what to write. They're not sure what categories to use, and they may, yeah, just not know how to do that well.
Yeah.
I know you've suggested basically doing it in 3, I think 3 times a day, right? Reflecting on what you've done in that. Wonder if you have other tips on making it more useful for people or making it more practical for people or on helping people include some reflection with that, because I think that might also be something that people may resist is doing it just for the sake of having the numbers as opposed to reflecting on it.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's lots of ways you can track your time. I track my time on weekly spreadsheets that have half-hour blocks. So it goes Monday to Sunday off along the top, and then half-hour blocks down the left-hand side, 5 a.m. to 4:30 a.m. to sort of reflect what I think of as a day,
Mhm.
right? So it actually doesn't go midnight to midnight because that's not how I live my days, and I'm guessing it's not how you live your days either. Think about when I wake up in the morning and then going through to when I go to bed. But anyway, like, it's just Excel. Like, it is nothing fancy. If anyone watching this wants to get one of the kind that I use, you could go to my website. It's lauravanderkam.com and then slash manage hyphen your hyphen time. Okay. But again, you could make your own very easily because it's just Excel. And, uh, but I check in 3 times a day, write down what I have done since the last time I checked in. I am not trying to make really cool pie charts. So I will go ahead and say that I am not using like almost any of the functionality that Excel actually has to do this, because I realized that I didn't care so much about the categories being like mutually exclusive and comprehensively exhaustive to make a cool pie chart.
Mhm.
I was more sort of interested in the bigger categories, and so I will just put stuff like work. But sometimes if I'm trying to drill down on it, I'll say what I was actually doing during a work block, sleep, um, kids, etc. Like that's sort of the amorphous kid time. Driving, if I'm running, put that in. Reading, all those. You could think of time pretty broadly. Just use whatever words you would use it to describe to a friend.
Mhm.
So if you ask, "Hey Laura, what are you doing right now?" Just put
Driving,
that. Yeah, put
cooking.
that on
Yeah.
the log,
Uh-huh.
because again, it's you don't have to make a cool pie chart. This is just for you. And then at the end of the week, I do try to reflect. Even now, I've been doing this for years, but I archive my old logs every Monday morning and then open a new one. And so I like to reflect on what did I do over the last week. Sometimes I look at, was my sleep looking sort of regular and about how much I sleep I want to get. Did I have any good adventures? Like what would be my memories from this week? What would the
Mhm.
highlights
Mm,
be of
mm,
this week if I were looking back on this?
mm,
Did I exercise regularly? Did I do any cool things with family members or friends?
mm.
Just general things like that. It's really just for you. But yeah, if you don't want to use a spreadsheet, there's lots of time tracking apps on the market that people sometimes find helpful if they don't want to use the spreadsheet. So
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, you talked about, I think in your previous book, the Tranquility by Tuesday book, you talked about having a big adventure, I think, and one big adventure, one little adventure, right? And I guess in this moment of reflection at the end of the week, when you're switching, you could also savor that a little bit, sort of think back to that in the way that we sometimes do when we see an old photo on our phone. Um,
yeah. Yeah, no, I mean it's because that is what you will wind up remembering of the week, and I've been doing this long enough that I've actually started pulling up old logs.
mm,
I generally try and pull up one that had the same week cycle. right?
Uh-huh.
So, like the week that started April 27th, what was that? And like, I guess that the last one, it was back in 2020, that Monday was the April 27th. So I pulled up 2020 of Aprl 27th, see what was I doing? What was that week? What do I remember? And
Beginning
sort
of the
of looking at
pandemic,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like Gretchen Rubin's the 5,
The 5-year journal.
5-year
Yeah.
journal where you
Yeah.
can look back at the prior day. Some other concepts from this book that I think that resonated with me from the new book, that people might find interesting, in no particular order because they're kind of spread out across the book. One is this idea of active patience. I, for one, will confess to feeling a lot of time guilt. Madeline Door's book, I Didn't Do the Thing Today, really resonated with me because I feel that so often, this pressure to not always to just be more productive, but to do as much as I can. Even on a weekend, I want to enjoy as much as, the city as I can, for example, or
Hmm.
the time with my kids as I can. And that creates a sense of pressure. And I think what you're getting at toward the end of this book and this active patience is like taking this broader view of time, right? Can you talk a little bit about that and how you cultivate that sense of active patience and how you avoid the guilt when your days don't go the way you envision them or plan them?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, everyone has days that don't go the way they envision or plan them. But I think one of the things that time tracking for so long has helped me figure out is exactly what will fit in a week
Mm,
and what doesn't. And so I almost never assign myself stuff for a week that I'm not gonna do.
mm,
And it's like there's this certain sense of reality that comes from seeing very clearly this is what you do in 168 hours.
mm,
This is what will not fit in 168 hours. And so that 11 years of practice at it means that I'm not putting anything on my priority list for the week that I do not actually intend to do.
mm,
Now, because of that, the priority lists tend to be relatively short because stuff comes up. As you mentioned, there could be emergencies in both work life, personal life, and so because of that, they tend to be fairly carefully chosen.
mhm,
Now, if I finish those things, there's a million things in the world one could do. Always go find other stuff to do.
mhm,
But I find that gets rid of a lot of the guilt. Is if I know I'm going to do the stuff on my priority list, and it has been very carefully chosen to make sure that it will fit in 168 hours, then as long as I keep doing what I've set out to do, then I don't feel some huge guilt that there's other things I should be doing because
mhm,
I've either decided not to do it or I'm knowing I'm doing it in a future week. Like that's when I'll assign it for.
mm, mm.
Um, so, I mean, maybe some people feel like that's a very limited view of life. Like I should be aiming for the clouds and, or what is that horrible motivational poster? Like aim for the star or aim for the moon, you'll land in the stars or something like that. Like, no, I mean, I want to have an exact match between what I set out to do and what I actually do. And I find that gets rid of any guilt I might have
Mhm,
about time. So just throwing that out there as an idea for how one might do that. But the topic of patience is more that some things just take a lot of time, and you can't immediately do all of it, but over time you can. And I've certainly had this feeling with writing books, for instance. Like when you start out, you can't see everything that will be in it. I mean, you can have a detailed outline, but stuff is still going to come to you over the course of writing it that you will be putting in and adding as you go. Or Jeremy, I know you're a musician. Like when you're learning a new big piece of music, you don't have all of it at the beginning.
mm,
Like it's coming to you over time. And the more time you put into it, the more it becomes a part of you and the more all everything feels like it had to be that way in a way that it wasn't, when you first encountered it. So, a tree, like it would be silly to yell at a tree for not being very tall when it's 3 years old. Like it just takes the time it takes to get to be, a giant tree. And the same thing with many things in our life. I mean, yes, we can be more efficient, but certain things just take a lot of time. And if we're willing to give them some time, well, time will pass and eventually we'll be there.
How do you talk to the voice in your head if you have that voice that says, "Gosh, I should be doing these other things. I could be doing these other things." You do puzzles, right? That
Yeah.
a lot of time. You listen to the St. Matthew's Passion. It takes a lot of time. Like, you're doing these things and you have so many opportunities, right? As a professional, as a writer, as a speaker, as a coach, etc. How do you have that voice that says, gosh, there's all these things and I should be or could be doing something else? Or do you silence it? Do you get into flow? Like, how do you handle that?
Yeah, I think I just try not to listen to that as much, because it's not helpful. Like, you're either doing it or you're not. I mean, what's the Yoda? Do or do not. There is no try.
Hmm.
So if you're not gonna do it, then there's not a whole lot of point in feeling guilty about not doing it.
Hmm.
Now, if you do feel guilty about it, then maybe that's a sign you should do it, right? I mean, if it's something that you truly not just, like, sometimes it's because somebody else wants you to do it, and you don't really care, like, that you can kind of unless that person is very, very valuable to you, like, yeah, you can kind of push that off. Um, but, you know, if you feel like as you're thinking about it, yeah, actually that would be a really good thing to do. Well, maybe you can move things around and put that in. And, that sometimes that can be a important voice from that perspective.
I want to get at a few other things you talk about in this new book. One is the toad time, which I like, which also kind of got into a little bit in the Tranquility by Tuesday in terms of getting outside by at least by 3 p.m. I think you said move by 3 p.m., which is one I really appreciated that insight because I'm often inside my office here at the university, and it's like a beautiful sunny day here in New York City. So yeah, maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Mm.
The idea of getting outside, of having that time in the evening, and maybe that also ties into the golden hours, how we make more of our kind of free evening hours that sometimes just get frittered away.
Yeah. So Toad Time is an acronym that my family uses for meaning time outside after dinner. And if the double time in that acronym bothers you, you just call it to gather outside after dinner. But the idea is that you go outside after dinner, because this is, especially like this doesn't work necessarily in February. But like once the time change happens in early March, it's light till about 7 p.m. in my part of the world. So if you're, eating dinner 6 or so, and you could go outside after dinner for a little bit. And my kids love being outside after dinner. I don't know what it is. I think, other times of the day they're less, excited about it, but it seems somehow special to be outside after dinner. And of course, this is time that people might just naturally be like on their iPads. So it's kind of good to go outside after dinner and have a little bit less screen time. So yeah, everyone's happier outside, like including the supervising adult. Even if you don't have kids, you
Is
could
it a
go
walk?
outside after dinner.
Is it,
Go for a walk. It'll be
is it a
good.
walk for the destination or just a walk for the walk's sake? Like, what do you do on the walk?
Yeah, I mean, well, we we don't necessarily walk. I mean, we go and play in the yard. I mean, I have the kids who are going to play in the yard, so that's kind of what we do. We're in the suburbs. If you're in the city, like obviously you could go to a playground. You could go for a family walk. Like it might be fun to have a destination. Probably you're not going to go out for ice cream every night, but you could, once a week or so, and that would be a fun destination to do. But yeah, something to break up the monotony of this like dinner, homework, bath, bed,
Mm.
TV for the adults kind of routine that a lot of people fall into. Um, which brings up the topic of the golden hours, which is going to be the title of my next book, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh, nice.
but it's this golden hours is the time after work and before bed on weekday evenings. If you think about your golden years, like retirees are in their golden years, this is time for family or leisure after years of work. So we get a mini version of this
Mm.
every weekday evening, where it's time for family and fun after work is done. And for many people, this is not a small amount of time. Like I've studied, thousands of schedules, looked at larger time diary studies like the American Time Use Survey. Most people are done with work and work-related activities by 6 p.m. Now, not everyone. I know plenty of people here are not. Like, you can put in the comments if you're not. That's fine. I get it. I get it. Not everyone's life looks the same. But most people are, in fact, done by 6 p.m. Most Americans are going to bed somewhere between 10 and 11. Like, 40% of people are in bed at 10 and like 70% are in bed at 11. So it's in there is where the bedtime occurs. But that means we have 4 to 5 hours after work and before bed on weekdays. And there are things that have to happen during those times, but generally those things don't take the full 5 hours. And so I am on a mission to get people to set one golden hour intention each day. So something that isn't work or family, the physical care of family members or housework, to do for about 30 minutes in your weekday evenings that you have chosen and that you would genuinely enjoy. So this could be, doing puzzles like I do. It could be playing a musical instrument. It could be going for a family walk. It could be playing a board game. It could be reading a book. It could be screen time if it is chosen intentionally. Like, you and your spouse, you have young kids, you get them to bed at 7:30, and you've loaded up that movie you're going to watch, and you actually watch a movie from like 8 to 10. Like it could work if you plan ahead. Um, but the idea is that you have chosen it, and it becomes leisure time that you are aware of. Like, a lot of people have a story that I have no free time whatsoever. And when you go into your evenings and actually have your 30 minutes of chosen leisure, like, that can no longer be your story, right? And it is so much better not to have this story, because then we start recognizing our agency over our time, even just through 30 chosen minutes.
Mhm. Yeah, and it ties into another idea you had in your prior book, The Tranquility Bar Tuesday, the
Mm.
effortful before effortless, which I thought was just a great phrase, and um, and also captures a lot, right? And the examples you just gave in terms of the kinds of things you could spend this half hour on in a musical instrument, art, other things that maybe aren't just sitting back and passively watching, right? Which data shows Americans tend to do in great numbers. Yeah, could you say a little bit about why that is? Why the effortful is more valuable or is important, I guess, to intentionally focus on. Given that for a lot of people, the default assumption is that whatever's easier is what they should turn to because they've already worked a full day.
Yeah.
Why not just sit back and lounge, right?
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons people feel like they're working all the time and have no leisure time is because work is more noticeable. Like, it is planned, it is intentional, things happen at a certain time. And we don't approach our leisure time that way.
Mm,
And obviously, you're not going to be sending like, Outlook invites for dinner or like planning every 15 minutes or anything like that. But it is helpful to have some intention for your leisure time, because then it does feel like it happened. So the categories of effortful fun and effortless fun. I think about this because so many people tell me, like, "Oh, I would love to have more time to read. I'd love to have more time for my hobbies," right? And yet, when you look at how people are spending their time, we spend a lot of time on what I call our electronic hobbies of surfing around online, like doom scrolling, responding to social media comments, all these things. And I'm not sure that any of us sort of in the abstract would choose that as how we wanted. Like, if I was going to have a hobby,
mhm.
would it really be reading headlines? I don't think it would be. Like, that doesn't sound very fun. Um, sorry, excuse me. I've been talking a lot lately. Um, so, the idea for effortful fun, to do before effortless fun, is to challenge yourself anytime a spot of leisure appears, to do just a few minutes of these sort of higher effort fun before you default to the effortless of screen time. And so that could be, reading for a couple minutes. Like, say, okay, I'm picking up my phone. I am about to go on Instagram. Let me read an ebook for 3 minutes before I open the Instagram app. Now, one of two things will happen. One is that you will get so into your book that you will keep reading it, because effortful fun is fun. Like, once you get over the initial hurdle to start it. Um, and Instagram will still be there forever. So like that's fine. Like, you could push it off a little bit. But or, even if you do switch over, like, you at least have gotten some other form of fun. Like, you will have had more of a balance if you are, reading for a few minutes and then doing your screen time, versus if you start with the screen time, it's often very hard to stop and switch over to the more effortful varieties.
Mhm. I want to touch on tools for a minute. I know, at least I shouldn't say I know. My sense from your books, since you don't talk a lot about technology, is that technology isn't kind of like a primary focus for you. Um, Having said that, though, for a lot of people who are reading this newsletter and who are interested in sort of AI and how other tools can help them in their lives, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about, first of all, AI as a source for analyzing and identifying like patterns in your own time.
Mhm.
Curious if you've tried that in terms of feeding these time logs and seeing what are the patterns that an AI tool might draw from that, and or whether you find the AI useful in thinking about different possibilities. Like I was thinking about, you had this thing in the book about um, brainstorming different ways you could spend 10-minute breaks. And I was like, oh, actually, that's something where I would be interested in what are the 25 things that might Claude suggest.
I would tell
Based
you.
on, yeah, based on what I know, right? So anyway, yeah, I guess I'm curious about AI usage and thinking about your own time, analyzing your own time, brainstorming ideas. And then also just more broadly, like some of the tools, to the extent that you use some tools, which tools do you find actually useful for you?
Yeah. So, I mean, I am not a big AI user, honestly. I'm sure I'm terribly behind the eight ball on this, but it's I will figure out at some point what it is useful for me. Um, but currently, I mean, the things that I think a lot of people are potentially using it for are not things I would want it to do for me. So, like, I was on a webinar recently where somebody was like, "I use it to write all my newsletters," and I'm like, "Yeah, I like writing." So that's like, it'd be like paying a robot to like do a puzzle for me. I don't really understand what the point of that would be. So since I like writing, I would never use it for that. Um, there are upsides for, like, brainstorming or researching things that you might need a little bit of help. So, for instance, like, what are all the productivity newsletters out there? Feed that in and, comes up with a list of, like, 60, and, of them, 30 I have heard of, 30 I haven't. Of those 30 I haven't, 15 it's because they don't exist.
Mhm.
So, but then the 15 that I went and checked and found, I was like, "Oh, that's good. Well, I found some new ones. That's exciting." Um, so there are some upsides with that, I guess, as long as you are carefully supervising as the human in charge and using it for your purposes, but not, just as like throwing it out into the world without any monitoring. I do think that people since there's no downside really to, like, feeding a time log into it and asking for insights, um, yeah, I guess that was the one time I had the thought that, like, "Uh-oh, AI is gonna take my job." That's, like, what I do. I analyze people's time logs. You could totally do that, though. You could put it in, see, well, what do you find? What would you suggest? My experience from the people who've done this and told me about, what various AI agents have found is it becomes a bit like, like a tarot card, or a fortune telling reading. Like if something feels right to you and it says it back to you, like then yeah, you're like, oh yeah, yeah, that's true. That's something I should do. But like half the stuff may be like, what? It's like you're going to bed at 8:30. Have you thought about going to bed also at 8:30 on this night or something? It's just like it wouldn't necessarily be. You still have to kind of judge what's useful and what isn't from it, but that's like any advice, right?
And what about tools in a given day? Like you look at yesterday, I know you're doing your book publicity, et cetera. You're managing a family, you're doing your career stuff. Like what are a few of the tools that you actually find useful in your workflow, in your toolkit?
Um, let's see. I mean, this is gonna sound so funny.
Okay.
But, I always say this as a tip because maybe there's, like, one person out there who doesn't know this, and it could so save them time. If you are a parent who is, like, constantly needing to, like, scan and send back permission slips or, like, health forms or anything like that, you can just scan it from your phone as, like, a PDF that, just go to the Notes app in your iPhone and hit the paperclip, and it comes up to scan. And so, when I figured that out a few years ago and got to stop using my scanner and converting it to the little, memory thing and sending it over to my computer and then sending it back to people, I was like, this is beautiful. Like, I love it. Documents have become so much easier. Now, do I wish everything was on like DocuSign? Of course. That's another thing that I enjoy when I can use that for it. But yeah, I don't know. I don't use a whole lot of apps that often. I love cameras. Like, I love having photos. That's fun.
Mhm.
Um, life was different when we couldn't take photos of every cute thing your kid was doing constantly. I enjoy that part. But if anyone's looking to track time and is thinking that an app might be helpful, I've had a couple of people have a good experience with Toggle, which is Toggl. And the upside of that is that there is a free version. So you can get yourself the free version and just use that. Then if you decide you need more bells and whistles, there's obviously paid versions of that. There's lots of other paid time tracking apps on the market, but you would go into the market for a paid app then knowing what you needed, having experimented for a while with Toggle.
That's a great tip. Yeah, and I use one called Rise, RIZ,
Mhm,
and the nice thing about that one is it's less babysitting. It sort of automatically categorizes
mhm.
things for you, which is great because I always used to forget to log all of those things from Toggle. What about your writing? Like you've written all these books. Do you have a toolkit used for that? Do you use just Microsoft Word and Google Docs? Like, do you have some tools that you use as part of that writing process?
Um, yeah, it's basically my, Microsoft Word and Pages, and because I have Apple products, which means I had to buy, like, Microsoft Word to convert it to like, send it to over to anyone else, which is a funny thing in its own right. Um, but one thing I have started doing is that I got myself 2 computers,
Uh-huh.
um, just to have I mean, basically it started like, I know a lot of people have bought a second monitor, and that would have been the more efficient way to do this, but what it was is I had an old laptop that I was using, and then it stopped having the functionality to do a lot of the new programs like Zoom and Google Meet and, Teams and all that, which are very helpful too, and I wanna do a shout out to those apps, like, you know, anyone who started working in, like, the '90s, like, before you could do stuff like that, I mean, just the fact that we can talk and see each other is, like, very, very exciting. Um, but, uh, so I had one laptop that stopped being able to run most of that, so, of course, I bought a new laptop and started migrating a lot of my stuff over there, but I hadn't migrated everything over there, so I was kind of, like, working on 2 different laptops, and I'm like, "This is actually kinda nice because I can write on one and, like, have something else open on another,
Mhm.
and then, have the notes without having to go in and out of things, and so, obviously, that's obvious, I'm sure, to most people too, that having 2 monitors might be helpful and make you more productive because you just don't have the constant task switching
Mm.
in the same way that you would if you only had 1 screen.
Mhm. What about the podcast? You've been doing this daily podcast. For anyone who doesn't know, Before Breakfast, I've listened to for years, although I've always had to flash forward through all the ads at the beginning. Uh, uh,
Sorry, Jeremy, I'm trying to make a living here.
I know. I can't blame you. I can't blame you. But it's great because it's a micro podcast, and I've
Mhm.
actually like, told people for forever that like we need more of those because not all the time do we want to listen to a half hour, hour. We just want a nugget of insight, which is what you offer each time is a one nugget, which is really useful in a couple minutes, which I think is great. So back to the tools question, how do you do that from a tools perspective?
Well, I mean, I'm sitting here in my recording closet, which I mean, I just have, a pretty fancy like microphone. I can kind of hold it up here, but it's gonna
Right.
fall all over the place now.
Okay.
I shouldn't have done that. And
Sorry.
then I do like a recording device, it's pretty
A
straightforward.
digital recorder.
Yeah, yeah, digital recorder.
Okay. And then you just send someone a file and they.
Yeah, send them the file, and they make it pretty, put music before it, add the ads, which
Right.
everyone then forwards through. Um, but the reason for a micro podcast kinda thing is that, they're just different lengths of time that people want to listen to stuff to, and most things are about 30 minutes because most people's commutes are about 30
Mm,
minutes.
mhm.
And a lot of people are in fact still listening to podcasts in the car on the
Yep.
way to and from work. That's what people are doing. Or sometimes it's that they're doing a workout, but again, that is 30 minutes. So it's like, this is the chunk of time that people are willing to listen to stuff. Although I still find it hilarious people like fast forward through like they not fast forward through ads, but like listen to things on like 1.5 or 2x speed,
Mhm.
which again, if you are trying to fill the time on your commute, I'm not sure what would be the point of getting through it faster.
Yeah. I think it's this idea I think you mentioned this in one of the books about how, in your life, you're only gonna read some number of books, right? And there's gonna be a far more
Yeah.
greater number of books that you're not gonna read, right? And so I think as someone who occasionally does, I admit, listen to things on a hyper speed, I do so because with podcasts, for example, there are literally like 50 different podcasts that I think are really good. Like people like you have really thought out something useful and I can learn from, and I can't listen to most of them.
Yeah.
But if I listen to, some of them a little bit faster, then I can learn from more people, right? That's at least the rationale.
Well,
Um,
Jeremy, just think of how fast you could listen to all of Beethoven's symphonies if you listen to those at 2x.
Music is an exception. Music, I think, is an exception. Um, Music definitely does not work at a different speed, nor do movies for that matter.
Yeah.
Actually,
Yeah.
there's somebody who I won't name who wrote about watching movies at extra fast speed. They looked for a feature. They found a way to do this in their movie watching tool of choice.
Oh my
And I thought,
goodness.
yeah,
That
that I couldn't relate to because that's.
no.
But when it's a podcast where it's just information, people are just sharing an idea. A lot of times people talk slower than we can listen. It's like we
Hmm.
talk faster than we type. So, yeah, so I find it's okay in that realm, and there's a lot of gaps, and there's a lot of filler in a lot of
Yeah.
podcasts, actually.
Yeah.
Not in yours because it's pretty scripted, and
It's succinct.
it's only 2 minutes or whatever, so it's short. Anyway, um, back to the book, one of the things you talked about that I thought was interesting was this idea of thoughtful accessibility and the flexibility thing. A lot of people have this perception that when you're talking about planning your time and being intentional, that means like having everything scheduled out. That's kind of the negative assumption some people might make. But you talk in that chapter about actually kind of having some freedom and flexibility and spontaneity and thoughtful accessibility, as you put it. Could you share a little bit about that and how that works with also being intentional?
Yeah, so I like thoughtful accessibility because we want new things to come to us. Like, I mean, a lot of productivity literature is about saying no to things because the idea is we're all so busy, we should say no and to free up space, which, there's something to that. I certainly don't want people to have things in their life that they don't wish to be doing, we do need to say no to certain things. But if you think about it, you soon see that almost all new opportunities and relationships and adventures come to us from saying yes to something that we don't entirely know about, right? Something new to us. Because if you knew about it already, you'd be doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you have to be open to new things in order to bring any sort of big breakthrough into your life. And so, how do you thoughtfully make space for that? I mean, we do want boundaries, right? But the problem again with building a wall around yourself is that you will keep out bad things, but you will also keep out good things that don't have an explicit invitation. And until we are like so famous and amazing that everyone is beating down the door to get to you, like most opportunities do not come gift wrapped. Most opportunities come from you putting some work in. Like you meet with somebody and they mention, oh, you should really check out Bob. Like I think you and Bob would hit it off. And they're like, okay, I'll reach out to Bob. And you reach out to Bob. And then all of a sudden we realize you and Bob really could do some awesome things together. And that's where the new breakthrough comes from. But you won't do that. You won't put the effort in and reach out to new people and make time for this if you feel completely swamped.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to leave enough open space in our schedules that you can say yes to new opportunities. So the reason to clear out your schedule, the reason to say no to things is not to just, naturally have less going on. It's that you want the mental space to say yes when something awesome comes up. And that's true at work, but I'd say it's also true in our personal lives. There's some interesting research finding that people who feel like they are carrying a lot of the mental load of raising a family and running a household often feel less like they can take on anything else beyond that. Regardless of how much time it is actually taking, it is the mental space, and they feel like they don't have more mental space, and so they're not willing to do new things. And I get it. I have 5 kids. Like it's May right now. Do you know how many recitals, concerts, end of year events, from somebody's flashlight Friday, like, and whatever that are happening right now, and it's all somewhere, and it makes you feel like you can't take on anything new. But that, of course, is where the new opportunities come from. So I'm always trying to be careful about managing mental load and reducing that as much as possible, so that I am willing to, if a professional acquaintance is like, hey, Laura, we're actually having this really cool meeting of people like, in somewhere, New York, Miami, wherever it is, like, would you like to come? I sometimes can say yes. Um, because I've tried to keep all the other stuff um, from taking over all my brain.
One of the things that you talked about in this book is having each night of the week kind of preset, so you don't have to make a decision necessarily. Monday is pasta night, right? You wrote. Are there other areas of your life where you're able to do that? Where I know, famously Obama didn't want to choose clothing every day and that kind of thing. Are there other areas where you can reduce the complexity or decision making?
Yeah, I mean, there's with anything in life, if you want to spend less time or mental energy on it, you can ignore it, you can minimize it, you can outsource it. And many of us wind up choosing some number, some combination of all those for different things in our lives. So, meal planning is something that, like, I swear this is a cover line on every women's magazine, like every issue for time immemorial. And I get it on some level, but I've sort of made my peace with eating roughly the same thing most weeks, which are the number of meals that they're customizable, but like that my family will eat. If we want to do fun stuff, we do it on the weekend, right? Like if we want to make something cool and new and exciting, Saturday and Sunday are great nights for that. But Monday through Thursday are not. So we tend to, we have pasta on Mondays. We currently are doing a fajitas on Tuesday, where we do breakfast for dinner on Thursdays, for
That was the
instance. So
most surprising one. I was surprised you could do that year round.
which one?
The breakfasts.
The breakfast for dinner? Yeah, well, I don't
Yeah,
know.
twelve,
Everyone
twelve,
likes
12 days.
bacon. Like,
Yeah.
good stuff. Um, so yeah, that's or like make your own pizza night, right? So everyone can put what they want on their pizzas, but like bread and tomato sauce is pretty good base for anything else. And you can make it different every week if you want. Um, but yeah, something like that. And because I'm not spending any, mental energy meal prepping during the week, that is time that, can devote to other things. You know, I we have sort of a complicated family driving schedule, but it tends to be about the same most weeks unless something comes up, that somebody's traveling or whatever, and then, we move it around. But we definitely have help from other people. My husband and I both work, so we cannot drive everyone everywhere they need to go. There's only two of us anyway, and there's more kids than that. So
Mhm.
have to have other drivers in the afternoon for helping with that, for instance.
When you look at your career in terms of the line, your books have been very successful as far as I know, and they're very effective. I'm curious if you also are considering or have considered, other kinds of books. You wrote a novel which was really fun, and you wrote a book about money. I think early on, right? Which was interesting and sort of connected to time in some ways. Are there other subjects that you're excited about? You obviously have a passion for music. You have some other interests. Are there other books that you envision writing or plan to write at some point?
I don't know. I do like writing fiction, so I'll probably do more of that. But the beautiful thing about time is that you can get about through just about anything through that lens. You can write profiles of people and talk about their schedules.
Mhm.
You can write about um, organizations and like how they are do things strategically, because that's also kind of how they spend their organizational time
Mm.
on different things. You can write about history in terms of how people spend their time. You can write about social phenomenon. Like this is also a function of how people are spending their time. So I haven't felt that limited in it yet. I'm sure there are new angles, but it's like anything in this world. You're trying to come up with the overlap between topics you are interested in,
Mhm.
that there's enough to say on, and that other people are interested in too. I mean, there's many other topics that I am interested in. I'm not sure that the audience for them would be quite as big
Uh-huh.
as time. So we'll see. We'll see.
It can be always be a niche thing.
Yes.
Use the term you talk about the Snoopy mindset of not last days. There's this concept of, this could be our last day, right? That people sometimes like to say, carpe diem, that kind of thing. Can you kind of explain that concept that not last days?
Yeah. I mean, there's always this tension, and people are like, you should live every day as if it's your last. On some level, like, yes, you never know when you're going to die. Um, we could be struck by lightning right now. It could happen. Um, but this is kind of a unworkable concept. Like I want to see New Zealand. but I would not spend my last day on earth on an airplane, right? Like if I was going to live each day as if it's the last, it implies we should do the things that we want to do in life. But again, I'm not going to spend 17 hours on an airplane if it's my last day on earth. So yeah, what I think we're getting at with this idea is that we should make space in our lives for the things we want to do, and we should not wait forever thinking that a time in the future will come. But for most of us, there's this a cartoon, and it was like a bootleg Snoopy. It wasn't even the official one, but if somebody was saying, "Someday we will die, Snoopy," and he says, "Well, yes, but on all the other days we will not."
Mhm.
So I guess most other days we should live as if we are not going to die immediately, which allows us to invest in things for the future, right? Like if you truly thought you were going to die tomorrow, you wouldn't save money, but that would probably not a great idea. Like you should be putting money away and saving and investing. You wouldn't develop skills that will be helpful for doing things in the future. Like, why would you practice the piano? Piano would bring you great joy playing in the future, but why would you practice if it was your last day on earth? But when you recognize it's not your last day on earth, most likely you're going to be around, then you can start investing time for the future and things that will bring you joy in the future. I mean, if anyone wants to see their death odds, the Social Security Administration publishes a very fascinating, actuarial chart of what your odds are of dying in the next year. I'm happy to report that mine are very low. So turns out that women in their mid 40s are generally not, shuffling off this mortal coil all that frequently. Odds go up as we get older. But even so, if you've made it to any given age, your odds of making it to the next year are pretty darn good. Like, if you've made it to 92, the odds that you make it to 93 are excellent, in fact.
That's reassuring. That's
Yeah.
definitely reassuring. We have just a few minutes left. Thank you so much for this conversation. By the way, it's really a pleasure to talk with you. I'll ask you about kids. You have 5 kids. I have a couple of kids. A lot of the people watching and listening and reading may have children of their own as well. And we often think about our own time and how we're planning our own time. And I wonder what your thoughts are on how we can encourage kids to think about time in a way that's helpful for them, especially those kids who are overscheduled or busy or stressed, right? As many teenagers in America might be or elsewhere. Are there lessons you've imparted to your kids about this? I mean, obviously they learn from your example, I'm sure.
They might learn from my example. You will not be surprised to hear that my teenage children are not asking for my advice on time management. So,
Right.
if mom is allegedly an expert on something, that definitely does not mean that we want to be helped by her expertise in this. No, no, no. They're good kids, but I think it's also part of coaching anyone about time management and things like this is helping them figure out how they're going to manage their own time. And some of this is honestly just trial and error. And the good thing about learning it as you are, for instance, a younger teenager, is that you then have those skills as you become older and as the stakes start to matter. Um, so, definitely when my kids are in middle school, I've had conversations with them as the homework starts getting there. Like, okay, you have this assignment this week. When do you think you're going to do it? My 11-year-old had something that was due on Friday, and he's like, Thursday night. He's like, maybe even Friday morning on the bus. I'm like, okay, let's think about this a little bit. That if you're doing the assignment due Friday morning on the bus, what could go wrong in this scenario? And we talk about, well, the kid you want to talk with on the bus is on the bus, and you'd rather talk with that kid on the bus than do your homework assignment. It's like, okay, well, maybe Thursday night. Now, do you know everything that's involved in this assignment? Like, do you know that it is doable on Thursday night? Or are there multiple parts to it
Mm.
that, might be helpful to stretch out over longer periods of time? And, that's when people start looking at it and saying, oh, yeah, okay. Like, that's a thought. Now, they still might not do it, but then they get the experience of, the teacher being disappointed in them, their parents being sort of like, well, why did you do that? Like, and then they realize, okay, maybe I could do it differently next time. And it's been actually really awesome to see like my older kids kind of struggle with some of that and then become much, much better as they realize that they have the power to manage their time and put more time into things and plan ahead, and to see how their grades start going up as they do that, and that they can do really well in hard classes, as they figure it out. So I've enjoyed watching that as a parent.
And now you have a kid at college you mentioned,
Mhm.
right? I think you graduated from Princeton a few years before I did, or after I did, I should say. You're younger. What have you learned since then that, would be advice you'd give to people starting college now or, continuing in college now in terms of how they use the time in that very different kind of environment?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the best thing you can do as a parent is help equip your child to manage their own time, and when they go off and are not there with you, right? Because I suspect that a lot of high school students are still leaning on their parents to help them manage their time. That their parents are the ones reminding them, like, you have to do this, you have to do this. Remember, you have X coming up. Like, did you know, sign up for that? Did you sign up for that? And on some level, it is helpful to be reminded of things, but you will not be able to do that eternally, or you shouldn't at least. So, as much as you can, sort of like putting that over on the kid more and more is great. As for people themselves starting school, um, really avail yourself of a lot of professors will let you know what's coming up. Like there's a syllabus somewhere, like, you can look at time more broadly. Like, this is the whole, like, big time idea. The bigger you look at time, the more on top of it you will be, like, knowing what is coming up. And if you've just been accustomed to looking at the day or the few days in front of you, you're not gonna manage your time as well and as sustainably as if you look at the whole semester. Like, what am I expected to do over this semester? I will probably be studying a lot going into the finals and, like, writing my final paper, but I don't have to be crashing into that last week if I've moved some of that back, right? Like, if I've, looked at everything that's coming up and make sure I'm covering this material ahead of time and reviewing it constantly, like, building in time to review even if you don't have something immediately due. And then the more you can do that over time, the better off you will be at the end.
Mhm. That's really a great bit of insight. I wanna ask you about what you left out of the book, and then we'll conclude. What didn't fit in the book, or what did you have to cut? I know that's always a part of the process, especially when you teach books from start.
Let's see. Oh my goodness. Well, some is just my own idiosyncratic interests that my editors finally like, no. No, 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 no. Um, in the introduction to Big Time, I do talk about one of my obsessions, which is geological time and the end Permian extinction for anyone who wants to lie awake at night pondering something. So, about 252 million years ago, life was almost wiped off planet Earth. So, this was a big extinction before the one that happened with the dinosaurs. So, the dinosaurs were 65 million years ago. In Permian was 252 million years ago. It's sort of just like, like the fact that we're even here is so odd, so crazy. But then I threw in some like other geological thing, like about, in the Carnian pluvial event during the Triassic when it rained for a million years. We're like, okay, Laura, you go write the book about ancient Earth history if that's what you want to write about. This is the time management book. People will,
That's great, that's great. Well, you are one of the few authors for whom I read I look forward to every new book, and I read every new book, and I talk to people about you and include your insights in kind of in the way that we pay it forward in a way, like we share what we've learned from those we've learned it. And so it's been a great pleasure to talk with you and to keep reading your books, and congrats on all the great impact you have on people and in this way. I think people's time is something that they don't always manage as well as they'd like, and you really help people to do better at that. So thanks for that. And anyone hasn't read one of her books, this is a great one. The Tranquility by Tuesday was also a very good one, and 168 Hours. Any of those three would be a great one to start with. And then your podcast, which you still keep doing, right? How long has it
keep
been at
doing.
this point? The daily one. I mean,
The Daily one before breakfast has been running since early 2019.
that's
Early
amazing.
2019, so
Amazing.
7
Every
years, yeah,
every single day, every single day.
every single day.
But you batch them. I'm assuming
I
you do.
batch them, yes, yes, yeah, so I
You
have
don't actually.
no worries. I was not, like, in the hospital delivering my 5th kid and, like, recording a podcast. Like, I, record these episodes ahead and batch them, so it was, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, it's great. It's great stuff. Thank you. Thanks, Laura. And it's great to actually get the chance to talk
Yeah,
with you.
this was awesome. Thank you so much, Jeremy, really appreciate it.
And thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.